Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dental Voice on the Case with Zyrus. My name is Rolando Mia, and today we have a very, very special guest that I'm very excited to have on. Everybody, returning guest, Dr. Bryan Laskin. So, since we last talked to Dr. Laskin, a lot has happened, and the thing that I want to focus with him on today, and we're going to focus on, is a book, a really cool book that he wrote. As a matter of fact, one that at first I wasn't going to read because I don't read. And then when I got into it, totally blew me away. Um, Dr. Laskin, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just excited to be with you. You're such a positive, inspirational voice in dentistry. So I love the fact that you're doing this, and I'm honored to be on it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us and thank you for writing the book. So, the topic today, or what we're going to focus on, is this whole context stuff, patient first. It's amazing. There's a perception that we understand, or in dentistry, clinicians understand what the patient really wants. And then after reading the book and after going through this, I discovered, holy cow, talk about a paradigm shift. So, what I'd like to understand with you, Dr. Bryan, is what was the inspiration behind this and how did this come about?
Well, so I'm a dentist, like many people probably listening to this now, and I thought that I was doing everything I could do to put the patients first, and patients are the priority. And as I've transitioned and now I'm doing a lot more in technology and promoting technology to dentists and talking to dentists, what I've really found out is that through a series of things that I talk about in the book, right, that there's a lot of stories directly from my practice and from my experiences where my eyes were opened that if our job as dentists is to take care of our patients' oral health, right, we have to flip from our chair to their chair sometimes and look at it from their perspective. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And what I kind of came to the conclusion, and again, there's stories about it in the book that illustrate how and why I think we have what I call the great disconnect between the way dental teams view dentistry and the way patients view dentistry. And I break down why that occurs, why I think, and I was there. I mean, I was on the side that I didn't see the patient side. And then there's a couple things that I was just like, oh, wait a minute, I am off the mark. And if you think about it, broad, big picture, half the patients that are walking around in the United States of America don't see a dentist regularly, right? 22% of all dental treatment is delayed due to anxiety. That makes no rational sense. And so what I really wanted to do was attack directly, why is that the case? And that's what this book is about. And I think it's time for us as an industry to expand our definition of quality of care to include the experiences that our patients have so that we can reach those people that aren't seeing a dentist regularly, or maybe have more of that treatment done that isn't done because we're not looking at things from their perspective.
The big disconnect that resonates really strongly with me because, and I'm going to ask you to share a couple of stories in the book about it, is this big disconnect. You and I spoke briefly before, and I'd like you to touch on it. You mentioned, dentists are so clinically savvy and know so much about procedure, and they tend to focus on the product and the process, and they forget the outcome. And patients, on one end, are all about the outcome, right?
Well, yeah, I think that, dentists are by nature, and dental team members, not just dentists. We go into dentistry,
Clinicians.
right? I mean, most of us go into dentistry, at least in part, mostly in large part, I would argue, because we want to help people, right? And then we enter dental school and we realize that dentistry is hard. Clinical dentistry is difficult to perform. We're in nanometers, shade guys have gone from like 3 shades to 1,000 shades. Like delivering exceptional dentistry is a very challenging thing to do. And so we learn in dental school, rightfully so, to focus on clinical quality. But what ends up happening is that we become so narrowly focused on the quality of care that we don't pay attention to the to what's 6 inches above where we're working, right? The brain that it's attached to, because we're trying to deliver the highest quality of care we can, but we at the basically exclusion of all else, which I go into why that happens in the book, right? Because I think it's purely motivated by good things, by altruistic things, by reasons for trying to do our best for our patients. It completely causes us to ignore what patients are thinking, right? Which is counterintuitive. But I also believe in the 20 years that I've been practicing dentistry, delivering good clinical care has become so much easier. And our patients cannot distinguish between good care and exceptional care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can go online and order everything from a car to a house to a spouse in an hour. Right. But try to make a dental appointment. Right. It's a mess. And so this tidal wave of convenience has crashed over the world, and dentistry is lagging behind. And I think it's the best opportunity. I mean, it's the best opportunity that we have in dentistry, is to open our eyes to the way that our patients are viewing what we do, adjusting things a little bit. We're not even talking, these are not expensive changes. These are easy things to incorporate into your practice so that you can incorporate what a lot of offices would view as, I think, this isn't a big deal, but to the patients, it really is.
Yeah, there's a story in there about a treatment plan, and I'd love you to kind of share a couple of those with us. Where I forget, there was a patient having a lot of difficulty, and then you asked them to write a review, and it wasn't what you expected, right? About your coffee machine or something.
Yeah. Well, you gave away. Well, it was one of the biggest eye openers that I ever had in my practice, and I had spent hours and hours. It's a mid-20s woman who came in my practice, had been treated for bulimia 3 years before. She had a lot of enamel erosion on her anterior teeth and on her posteriors, and she was getting married, and she'd been healthy for 3 years. Her mom was a retired hygienist who believed strongly that if you touched a handpiece to a tooth, that tooth would need a root canal and be lost. But yet they wanted to restore her teeth back to the way they were. It's a very challenging case, very emotionally charged case. Let me put it that way. I talked with the mom over 3 hours on the phone, and she was crying and restore my baby's teeth. And all, they brought in pictures of when she was younger. And what we ended up doing, which was I thought was kind of an interesting case, was we ended up doing for her anterior teeth where she wasn't occluding on them. We did what I call taco veneers. It's like a buccal and lingual piece of porcelain that you bond on top of the teeth, because she wasn't occluding there. So I had space. There was enamel. So instead of just putting a porcelain on the outside, we wrapped around the inside too. So I didn't prepare her teeth at all, 7 through 10, and we just bonded them on. And we ended up doing, obviously some of her teeth we had to prepare, but for that first phase to kind of get her over the hump, we just did those taco veneers. And I handed her the mirror, and she started bawling. And I'm thinking, like, of course, like every dentist, what'd I do wrong? No, she was so happy because she got the results she was looking for. Mom called me up. Mom was crying. She was so happy. Her daughter's, she got their daughter back. And it's literally what she said to me. And so, I mean, it's like this very emotionally charged case where I put in the effort, got the results I was looking for. And then the patient went on and gave us a 5-star Google review. And I was just like, of course. I mean, of course, a 5-star Google review. Look at the time and effort and energy I put into this case, right? And then I read the review, and my heart totally sank because it said 2 things. It said, I love Lake Minnetonka Dental. They always run on time, and they have the best coffee. And I was like, it was like somebody slapped me in the face. I was like, what? Coffee? Like you said, I mean, that I bought the coffee pot, like a Keurig coffee pot, when I was just like going through Target, and it was probably on sale. And I was like, well, that'd be cool for the office, and we always run on time because I always, I cannot, I run on time. Right. And so, like for this podcast, boom, I'm here 2 minutes before or 1 minute before. Like I might not be early, but I'm not late. And I think it'd be disingenuous for me not to run on time for my patients, right? And I think what really happened was after I read that review, and I was like, my ego was totally crushed. I sat and I thought about it, and I thought, what happened was that patient had an expectation, and we met her expectations, right? But in her mind, I think, like most patients, that is an expectation, right? She wasn't really over thrilled by her teeth. She wanted that was the case. You better deliver on this or I'm going to be upset, right? So there's an expectation. Can you exceed people's expectations when it comes to delivering exceptional care? Maybe, but a very small percentage, because it can't tell the difference. That doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for the best care we can, right? But what it does mean is that they're already expecting it. They're already expecting you to be delivering exceptional care. That is a given now. Well, the way people are judging, unless you're doing not acceptable dentistry, the way I believe patients are judging us is based on their perception. Are you running on time? Do you have good coffee? Like,
Am I comfortable?
and that's kind of the stuff that I detail in the book. That I'm like, what does that mean? What are patients looking for?
Yeah, and there was another section that especially resonated with me, and where you talk about empathy, where you talk about the whole context around, that. What was the kind of the premise behind it? The difference between empathy, the difference between being conscious and mindful of your patient about their personal experience and their outcome.
Yeah, that's what I believe to be the answer, right? I mean, so the source of the great disconnect, meaning the fact that dental teams and dental patients see dentistry very differently, right? And I think there's a huge divide there, as we talked about. And I talk a lot about why that happens, and I think the source is in dental school when you become obsessed with clinical quality. But because of that, we're doing microsurgeries all day long on and really expecting perfectionist results of ourselves, most dentists. And we're doing that on somebody that somewhere between 60 and 80% of the population has dental anxiety, right? So this person is freaked out that you're working on trying to do perfect dentistry. So what that means is that, well, their anxiety is a distraction from my focus of doing quality care, because I'm, like most dentists, most dental care professionals, I'm empathetic. So I'm going to absorb that patient's stress, which causes me to be less effective at providing quality care, right? So I learned, most of us learn early on, that for me to deliver the highest quality care I can, I need to dissociate myself absorbing another person's pain, right? Or whatever emotion it is. But in our case, it's anxiety, right? So we absorb our patient's anxiety all day long, or we decide that we're going to react to it by cutting it off. Now, so how do we incorporate the patient's concerns, but not have it affect our quality of care? It's not apathy, like I talk about in the book. Like, if you don't care, right, then you're just going to
I know better. I don't care about you. That's not it.
Yeah. That's what's propagated the great disconnect. Not knowingly being apathetic, but in the interest of delivering higher quality care. So what I argue in the book is that the answer is compassion, where we can sense and we can react to patients' feelings without absorbing them ourselves. And that does not happen on its own, right? That happens by acknowledging that this is what's going on and flexing the muscle, right? By letting to be empathetic and then realizing what's going on. And over time, you can be not emotionally compassionate versus empathetic, where you're absorbing that stress and having it become debilitating. And that's kind of that chapter is about that, what the antidote to the great disconnect is, which I believe to be compassion, not empathy.
Yeah, I love the context of how you built, you want to be empathetic, you believe you are, but because of the clinical skill and training, it almost is perceived as apathy because I know better, but it's about compassion and recognizing that, hey, I've got a person sitting here who has anxiety, who may have fear, who I don't know how they got here, but they are here, and I need to treat them as a human. And in throughout your book, you highlight so many different examples and stories of engagements that you've had with patients. I want to ask you a question, and I'm curious: are there such a thing as a bad fit patient?
Oh, absolutely.
How do you handle that?
Absolutely.
And be patient first, because that seems like a contradiction in terms, because you want to do, the patient and do right by your patient, but then you hear a lot of issues of, okay, this patient is not a good fit. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think what is the Jim Rohn said that there's only 7 jerks on planet Earth, but they move around, right? So, but you'll every once in a while you'll run into one of the 7, right? And so I think, it is about people. Look, how do you put patients first? There's a myriad of things, and one of the things you have to do to put patients first is to take care of your team, right? And
Hmm.
so, one example of one of the 7 jerks would be somebody that's belligerent to your team for no reason, right? Because they're not going to be able to do best for the other patient if that existing patient is belligerent to your team.
Right.
And so there are, I think that doesn't have to do with the anxiety or it could be, but look, it's not about putting one patient first. It's about putting all of them first, right? And I think, and frankly, if that patient who's belligerent to team member learns a lesson and is less of a jerk, and then that 7, they drop out of the 7 and somebody else is, you've probably done them a favor. So I think there are good fits. I think also your practice, like every practice, I believe should know exactly where they fit in the marketplace, right? If you are pedo Medicare office and you see lots of kids and right versus a boutique veneer practice,
Cosmetic.
obviously that's going to color who's the right fit for your practice. It doesn't, putting the patient first is not about doing everything the patient says. It's about being about reaching the populace that doesn't see a dentist now because of anxiety, because of convenience. I mean, I think ultimately, I believe that as an industry, we have not adjusted to the winds of change for a long time. And I really wrote this book because the pandemic has slapped the industry, and we have to. A lot of us have to adjust quickly. As we were talking before, Ro, that like I think it's the best time to be a dentist today, and it's the worst time to be a dentist today. It's not an average time to be a dentist. And I think the difference between if this is going to be the best time for you or the worst time for you is how much you adjust to convenience and what patients are expecting. If you are willing to make the small changes like running on time, having good coffee in your practice, being compassionate to patients, I think there's more opportunity than ever. But if you bury your head in the sand and you don't incorporate those small changes, I think you're going to be crushed by those that do. I talk about in the book, there's a chapter about why DSOs are crushing it, right? And I think it's because they understand this, right? There's whole
Convenience.
teams. Yeah.
So, first of all, there's so many different aspects. There's so many, I went through your book and I identified, I even color coded it, stories which were incredible and they're real life stories. And then business topics, their dirty little secrets and how to deal with insurance, that type of stuff. And then advice. So, because we don't have, I'd love to spend more time. If you were to summarize, or for our viewers, and that people definitely need to be need to be a lot more compassionate and understand what are 3 things that people can walk away from this to consider, and then how can they get your book and get in contact with you? So what would those 3 pieces of advice that you could give people, clinicians especially today, given how much change is occurring, given how much more engaged patients can or can't be? What would those be?
Yeah, I think I think so. 3 pieces of advice. One I would say, make a decision. number one. Like, do you want to do dentistry? Do you want to run a practice? Or do you want to do both? And I think that's important distinction, because not everybody wants to do both. And I think there's an assumption in the industry that people do want to do both. You can do one or the other or both, and make that decision and decide where you want to be in your practice. And I think that it's a great time to be an associate. It's a great time to be a business owner, and it's a great time to do a little bit of both. But you have to decide what's the right fit for you. And I think not enough dentists are making that decision. Number two, I would look, if you do decide that you're going to own a business or lead a practice, or have, treat it like other businesses, meaning not like from the perspective of when you're walking around and you go to Starbucks and you see something that works, bring it back to your practice, right? Look at what's going on in the world, right? And then bring it back to your practice. Make the small incremental changes that over time compound to make massive results, right? I think that would be number two. And number three, I think I'll gear it towards a little more of a timely topic, which is staffing. I think right now and for the foreseeable future, staffing is going to be a very big issue in dentistry. And so these are three very broad topics, and so you can dig into it a lot. But I would say, look to incorporate technologies that replace the boring, mundane, soul-sucking operational things that happen in dental practices across the country. Because A, you'll need less team members, because there's just some things that computers do better than humans. And B, the people that stay will be unburdened by these boring things, and they'll be happier in your practice.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Make a decision, pick something really, really important, and not. I love the context stuff. When you see something that works elsewhere, think about it. You're engaging people, bring it in, and, make it easy for your patients and simple. And then technology, I think that's good. If people wanted to get your book, what would be the best way to do that? And how could they get that?
Well, the best way is to go to patientfirstbook.com. You can get it for free. You just have to pay for shipping. It's patientfirstbook.com. And yeah, I think I agree. And I detail one of the chapters I talk about is I make an appointment, get my teeth cleaned at a dental practice, and then I make an appointment and go eat in a nice restaurant, and I compare the two, right? That's the kind of thing that I think would help really illustrate what's going on you can be less judgmental if you do it in somebody else's dental practice than your own, right? It's easier to do.
No, that metaphor, I love that. Patient first, book that. Yeah, the metaphor about, look at the experience you have. Are you providing that experience for your patients? Because if you're not, guess what? Somebody else is. And you think you're doing great. I'm sure the clinical is awesome, but you're not engaging patients. So I love that. So patientfirstbook.com. If people wanted to contact you or reach you directly, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, you can also go to my website where you can contact me, which is just my name in one word, Bryan Laskin, Bryan with a Y, BryanLaskin.com. So BryanLaskin.com.
Oh, awesome. And then also you have, I know that you're working on lots of different things. You're working with an Upgrade Dental, a lot of educational forums, that type of stuff. People can find that out. And I just love the fact that you're so engaged, that you're constantly, reinventing yourself and doing things in addition to understanding what it is. I love the fact that I personally have a signed copy of your book. So thank you for that. And thank you so much for joining us on this. Folks, if you haven't had an opportunity to read it, it's a really good read, and it's an easy read, but it's also a very meaningful read. There's a lot of humor in here, which I kind of like. And there's so many things that we didn't cover, but when we do it, I'm sure at some point we can get into that.
Well, and I have to mention, I'm a huge fan, right? And I'm a huge fan of Xyrus and the products that you create that are innovative. I think it's great. I mean, I think you look at something like an Isolite, it fits perfectly into the message, right? Even what I was just talking about, automating things so that when you're short team, I mean, what you do to help offices with infection control and the technology that you guys create fits squarely into making patients more comfortable and providing higher quality care. It fits really, so I very much appreciate you having me on the Dental Voice.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hey, folks, if you like this content, please share it. If you want, please go check out Dr. Laskin's website. Go get his book. It is really meaningful, and there's so much in there. Dr. Laskin, at some point here, would you like to join us back and maybe follow up? I always enjoy talking to you and love what you're doing. Would that be cool?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, thank you. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Hope all safe, and thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.